Hello, hello.
How's it going, everybody?
I'm having a RAF attack.
Oh, get ready for the RAF attack. You got to be careful because he'll use his sarcasm against you.
He will. That ninja kicks.
Giant RAF doing the high kicks there.
Oh, yeah. Big kicks. Back kicks. Got all the kicks.
Very articulate. I love that RAF. Hope everybody's doing well out there in TV land and in Internetville.
I miss TV
You're
land.
all
It's a
feeling...
magical place for Saturday morning cartoons.
Full of radical, awesome, ninjastic.
Mega merchandising turtles. I think that's what they call them.
Are they Ninja Turtles or are they Hero Turtles?
They're both heroes and a half shot. Which sounds painful, so don't think about that.
They were heroes to me until I found out they were ninjas, and then they were ninjas.
Did you get banned? Did you get banned from your own house, Mark, for breaking everything with nunchucks and jumping through windows and climbing out of trees and stuff?
Well, ninja is a dangerous word, and if you hear that word
deadly,
as a young person,
word. They are assassins.
They can encourage you to get up to all sorts of stuff. So it was only appropriate that over here they were rebranded as heroes as opposed to ninjas.
And nunchucks got banned over there.
Yeah, we got a rope and a grappling hook instead.
You can have swords and knives. That's perfectly safe to play with for children. I've heard that from experts. But if you've got a piece of stick with a rope in between, that'll just wipe out entire continents.
Oh, it's as dangerous as a nuclear bomb.
Yes.
And it's one of those things
like nunchucks, it's like two nuclear bombs.
You can mimic the other turtles' weapons with household objects, easily enough if you put your mind to it. Well, you can go out to the garden, the broom handle, you can get some long cutting knives, maybe as swords.
Yeah.
And for the, the nunchuck would probably be the hardest one to replicate.
Yeah, I've seen in a woodworking class and that people, even in schools and that, turtles were popular, or Bruce Lee was obviously popularized nunchucks for turtles, but kids in woodshop class would make their own homemade nunchucks sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Rocksteady's got a wooden knife here too, so that's quite deadly.
Yeah, he always had this, that weird wooden knife / wooden machete weapon.
I can actually see it in 3D because I've got the statue on my desk and it looks exactly like that. It's got it on his back.
Yeah, the NECA version I think comes with it molded on. I don't believe you can actually remove it as far as I know, but it is there.
Yeah, there it is. I can lean back and sit. Yeah, but he has all his regular weapons as well. A little Mikey here's got a bit of something in his hand.
I wonder what he could be holding. A VHS, perhaps.
Could be one of them. Because the old episodes, of course, that was played on TV, started out as a Saturday morning thing. For we're covering the pilot episodes, which is basically known as the first 5 episodes of the show were sold as a promotional tool to promote the toy line through Playmates and Murakami Wolf. And it was meant to be just to promote the toy line, and basically that was it. There was no guarantee of actually making an ongoing show because it was just a package deal. A lot of toy lines were sold that way in the 80s, make some tie-in media to go with it. They pretty much call it the Star Wars model ever since Star Wars. That's like, and He-Man, that's what they all sort of copied and went, we want something to promote this line. But the VHSs were actually really big sellers for the Turtles. So I just found these nice images online this week, and I thought I'll chuck them at the start of the show because it's cool looking at this nice art they did just for the VHS covers. I never owned any of them on VHS, but I probably had recorded a lot of them on blank video cassettes anyway, so it's not like I really needed them.
Yeah, I had I had a couple of the Turtles VHS releases, of course. As mentioned, my ones were actually called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. I had a couple of the videos, and they were rare. They were a rare treat because my folks weren't too fond of dropping cash on officially licensed merchandise, especially VHS tapes. They weren't as cheap back then as they would become. Some beautiful covers here, though, I have to say. Some really nice artwork on display here. Very, very.
Like these. I remember seeing, obviously, with different. Each territory would have slightly different cover arrangement, but a lot of the art was reused. And I remember seeing at the video rental store, seeing the Turtles cassettes in there, but they were on TV that often repeated that I don't know if I've ever rented one because it was just in New Zealand. It was very popular, and the network TV3 played it. Was actually a new TV channel at the time. It just started when they played it, and they were fairly aggressive in like marketing it and playing all the seasons. It ran like they did the full run of shows right through all the seasons, where some countries ended before the last couple of seasons because it wasn't making enough in ratings and advertising money and all that. But they played it right through, so it was just always on. And then while the show was still going, it went into reruns as well as playing new episodes. So not just the first and second year, but year 3, year 4, they would start having reruns on weekends, and eventually, where it was less popular, it would be back to weekends for the final seasons, but still reruns on weekdays. So it was just on for like about 8 to 10 years non-stop. So I could always like record them off TV as well as watch them on.
Yeah, they were broadcast over here. It feels like forever. It's only really in the last few years it feels like I haven't seen the reruns on TV. And to be honest,
they got
I don't really watch
post
that
year
much TV
2000. They
anyway.
got sold off to different distribution networks and markets, because this is like your DVD era before streaming and other stuff like that. So the rights of it for the TV specific rights have been sold a few times to different companies internationally.
Sure, our American or North American viewers and listeners anyway will be familiar with this family home entertainment company that's releasing these videos, and probably some other childhood favorite cartoons as well. Over on my side of the world, it was actually a company called Tempo Video that released a lot of these under the Hero Turtles branding.
Yeah, you can see on
I love
that
some
one
of these
there,
covers.
Tempo.
Yeah, Tempo. Maybe not as even though I can see there, if you look closely, I guess Tempo must have just been a European distributor, because you can still
I'd say so.
see the family home entertainment logo in
Yeah,
the very
it's
corner
like
of
when you
that
see
there.
like vintage European Transformers that have multiple 2 or 3 different companies sometimes on the box, because it's like this one to that one to that one, and whoever sub license and contract and whatever.
£10 that well, $9.99 that video cost back in the day. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, but VHS to actually manufacture them still wasn't that cheap, really. There weren't a mass market, even though they'd been around technically since the 70s. Most of the 80s market was video rentals, and even video rental stores actually paid a lot to get the video cassettes, not so much for the physical cassette, but for the rights to have the movie, to rent it. They actually had to pay quite a lot of money to get a lot of the new release movies and that. I mean, some, it was a big market, but some places went out of business and couldn't afford to keep paying for the things. And eventually, it was the home kids market in the 80s that started pushing these kind of single release cassettes of, like kind of 30 minutes, 60 minutes. They'd be like Rainbow Bright, Strawberry Shortcake, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, stuff like that. Started doing this direct market thing. And they were certainly pricey for the time, but they were cheaper than buying, say, I don't know, Die Hard on VHS, or a lot cheaper than the adult priced stuff. So it became a really competitive market where certain companies tried to get in and make stuff a bit cheaper, make it a bit more viable for home purchase rather than just the rental market.
Yeah, and of course when we're getting these
You're only
tapes, we're
getting
not
2
getting
episodes on this.
yeah 3, maybe 2 2, usually 3 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
I think my return of the Technodrome tape had the first, the first 2 episodes were Return of the Technodrome Part 1 and 2, and then they also managed to squeeze in the Catwoman from Channel 6. When April O'Neil gets mutated, that was the 3rd episode. But other than that, I think my other tape only had 2 episodes on it. It was just like a random couple of episodes from season 2. So yeah, you were happy with what you got, but like you were saying, Johnny, it was on TV so much anyway.
And I had my
You didn't
3-hour
really,
blank cassettes, which were a lot cheaper as we got into the 90s, and I used to get heaps of those. I bought some, and my parents used to give them for me. So I had loads of stuff. I'd have bloody Simpsons and Frasier and Cheers and whatever was on. I'd just record shit all over the place. I don't know how I had time to rewatch it because there was always so many new shows on every week. I don't know how time to, but probably on the weekend because the adults are always using the bloody TV, and there's one TV in the house. So pretty much Saturday morning is, if there's not a decent news show on, might watch something I've recorded in the week or whatever.
Hack of the Big Mac. Big Mac with 2 C's, so don't be getting excited, McDonald's. There's nothing to sue over here.
You won't be seeing Big Mac, that moon face guy. He's not in this episode.
Yeah, they're really, really nice covers for these VHS releases.
Yeah, it's cool. And most of the art you see on stuff like this is done by one of 2 Mirage studio artists who were the guys who worked on the actual comics as well, but they did majority of the licensing media stuff for, like, I don't know, bars of soap, tent, sleeping bag, whatever. They would use like a generic image across a lot of the stuff you see repeated, but you'd get more unique ones like these ones here that are done for the VHS covers, and they always did like fairly nice art. And some of the same guys that worked on these went on to do stuff like the Archie Turtles comics and that, so you see a kind of similar style. But yeah, they're very cool. It was just random when I was looking up stuff, random turtle stuff, different bits and pieces I'm working on. I found these nice high quality images. I thought I'd better chuck them in there because that was definitely a big part of the Turtle Mania was the old VHS cassettes.
Oh yeah.
And these bits here, they're actually cell sheets. That's why the lines look nice and clear. There are a whole bunch of different ones. I just put them together here, but that's why they've got quite nice quality. It's not all video. It's actually a image that was on sale on Heritage Auctions.
Yeah, very, very nice, crisp looking images here. Bebop and Rocksteady looking great.
I assume they're just playing, like, there's a communicator, but I would think they're like playing some kind of like crappy video game or something on it when they're supposed to be up to some mischief.
Some bootleg Game Boy they're playing here. Yeah, so
we get to our first episode, Turtle Tracks.
Yeah, our big introduction to the series here. Straight off the bat, I have to say, before we get into the meat of the matter, even as an adult watching these back, you can still get a great laugh out of them, and they're very entertaining.
The writing
jokes
varies as you go into different seasons, but it certainly starts off very strong. Where I can, I've rewatched these again just the other week and really enjoyed rewatching them again.
You got the iconic intro theme with the great music.
Nice.
And of course, we're shown a city. We've a city drowning in crime here. The streets are not safe. There's gangs of rogues stealing and ripping people off and destroying property. So the city is going to hell in a handbasket, and we've got April O'Neil here from the Channel 6 News. She's here to report on the recent crime spree and do a running commentary of what's going on in the city. And there's speculation that these crimes are being conducted by a gang of ninjas, or at least a ninja adjacent gang, as some evidence from one of the crime scenes shows that they find a rope that's made in Japan. Great line. And so April, she's traveling the city and visiting these crime scenes and doing her reports, but the whole time this is going on, she's been watched by a mysterious, shadowy figure who seems to have armored plates on his wrists and forearms, and he's not too pleased with the coverage that April is giving this crime spree. So he sends some thugs to intercept her and teach her a lesson and basically threaten her to stop broadcasting and reporting, and send a message of intimidation towards her as well. But just as the thugs are about to descend on her, they're interrupted. I suppose I should also mention that she runs from the thugs and she actually escapes down a sewer where they pursue her. And just as they're about to attack, they are interrupted. They are attacked by 4 forms that are revealed to be the turtles. So this is our first introduction to the turtles on screen. And of course, April, upon seeing that her saviors are not human and are in fact green mutant turtles, she faints. She wakes up again in the middle of their lair, sees that there's also a talking rat, so she faints again. The talking rat, of course, is Splinter. We should probably mention as well, because it's one of these hilarious tropes in these old cartoons, that the mysterious shadowy figure, spoiler, who is Shredder, he's able to pretty much monitor anything he wants, because we see
from
here
anywhere.
the turtles. Yeah, the turtles are checking on April after she's fainted, and yet Shredder is here watching them on a monitor. So he must have cameras everywhere, even in the sewers,
There's, you never see any cameras anywhere, but all throughout the run of the show, they'll be watching things on monitors where it's just like they've got this like all-seeing eye of God camera that's everywhere.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's a handy little plot device to help move things along when you need your main villain to know about what's going down. But so we see here April, she is awoken once again, and this time she doesn't faint, and she gets introduced to the turtles properly. We learned their names: Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. We learned that they like to eat pizza, that they're a bunch of really cool dudes, that they've been trained in the arts of ninjutsu by their master Splinter, and we then get a little bit of a backstory, I believe, on kind of Splinter's background and how they
and you
kind
got
of
to have
came to be.
marshmallows and jelly beans on pizza. They always have like weird, disgusting combinations.
What do you think of this backstory? It's pretty hilarious. I always find this origin.
I like it, but it always confuses me because I watched as a kid, and we had the trading cards too, where you had those still images, and before you'd had any video cassettes or anything, you'd often have trading cards and be able to see a scene from a cartoon or film, and it kind of helps refresh your memory of what actually happened because it was just on TV and you might not see the repeat for a year or two. And then years later, I read the comics, and it starts to confuse in your head. I'm like, well, wait, he was the rat, or he was the guy, or how did it happen? And it gets confusing. But I really enjoy the origin little sequence here. I think they do it like quite well, and this is one of the parts that's like relatively faithful to the comics. The distinction being that in the comics, you had Yoshi had a pet rat, and the pet rat becomes Splinter, whereas in the animation, Yoshi is the man and he mutates into the rat. So they're one being rather than 2 distinct beings. So that's the main difference. I don't mind either version, really. Both work. And I think when you get used to the human mutating into the rat, and then later we see Bebop and Rocksteady mutating to things, it kind of makes sense for the cartoon continuity to have its own sort of thing. But yeah, it's a fun intro, and it's all kind of serious, like your typical either 70s kung fu film or 80s ninja film, where we see like the dojo here and they're practicing and training, and then Oroku Saki, who will later become the Shredder, puts this like knife pinning Yoshi to the back of the wall, so it looks like he's trying to assassinate the visiting master. But then when it comes to asking advice of the master, or what going to do with this guy, he's like, "Oh, throw the bomb out." It's like real comical delivery. It's real kind of like bad voiceover dub kind of voice, like you watch old martial arts movies with American dubs. It's that kind of silly voice.
Hilarious. Yeah. So first of all, there's the sign of disrespect, because when Shredder kind of pins Yoshi's robe to the wall, he can't bow to the master, so that's a big sign of disrespect as well, which angers him further. And then of course, yes, the look that he was trying to assassinate him as well. But yeah, toss the bum out. What a line. Yeah, just throw him out. And of course we see this the Foot Clan at this period in time is causing havoc in Japan, on the streets of Japan as well. And Yoshi, he takes refuge. He kind of becomes like a hermit in many ways. He just practices ninjutsu and studies, and he gets some pet turtles that were like flushed down the sewers, and they become his kind of main companions. But then of course we see as the mysterious retro mutagen ooze is poured down into the sewer, and it mutates the turtles and mutates Yoshi, combining him with the form of the rat, and he becomes Splinter. And as mentioned earlier, of course, the turtles, they end up being named after his favorite Renaissance artists, Leonardo, Michelangelo,
Yeah,
Donatello, and
there's a fun
Raphael.
callback to that in later episodes, and when it gets to the first full season after the pilot ones, the punk frogs are all named after like terrible warlords and that by Shredder,
Yes.
like Genghis Khan and that.
Yeah, always love that. Always love that.
And I like here too where the turtle starts to mutate. We see this like little baby version of the turtle. We used to get those minifigures in the vintage line, and they would actually glow in the dark. And then it's
That's
not as
right.
good, but in this line here, they've brought them back to that's that mayhem. They give you a little one in here, which technically glows, but you can't hardly see it. Whereas the one that came with the figures when I was a kid, that one was like super bright, like Scare Glow and Masters. You could see it from across the room. But I lost all those. I don't know what happened to them. I've still got my figures, but I don't know where my glow turtles went. I might have given them to my younger sister or something like that.
Yeah, I do like in the vintage Playmates line. If you'd buy a tub of the retro mutagen ooze, you'd get those little turtles inside it as well,
Yeah,
the glow in the dark ones. So they were popular, as was all the
yeah,
turtle
they were
merch
really
at the
cool
time.
little minifigures, and I forgot they even existed for a number of years. I just because I didn't have it so long, and one day I was looking up online, going, "Oh, that's familiar." I went, "Oh, yeah, I used to have a bunch of those, and I don't have them anymore." But yeah, I like they do these
Funny,
coloured glowing backgrounds here. Look really cool, showing off the turtles doing their individual weapon styles, isn't it?
yeah, matching the color of their headbands as well, the
Yeah,
background, which is really cool. So
and that's
April, yeah,
definitely
she gets
a
to
very anime kind of like style as far as like showing off the nice framing and look of the character and that.
So April, she's gotten the whole backstory and origin of Splinter and the Turtles, and it's pretty funny. We cut to the Channel 6 newsroom where like Vern and the boss man are like complaining about April having not shown up to work in a couple of days or whatever. But it's
Yeah,
hilarious because like Vern and a few of the other Channel 6 crew people were on duty when April O'Neil was like attacked and abducted, and they don't seem to be like, they're not calling the police or anything. They're just complaining
no,
about the
it's
fact
sitting
that she
around,
hasn't shown up to work.
and it's fun hearing when you go back to the very first episodes of any animated show. You always notice like little variations from how the voice actors are still kind of finding the character in late episodes. Like Homer Simpson's a classic one. He sounds very different in the first season to later ones. When you hear Vern, his voice, it's the same voice actor, but the voice is really different in the very beginning.
Yes,
He
and
plays
and,
it
and a
more
couple of
straight, and he gets more goofy as he gets into the other episodes.
you can tell a few of the general kind of news crew people are actually voiced by the Turtles as well, because the voices are
Yeah,
just
yeah, you can
very
hear like the Mikey
similar.
voice and the Donny voice.
So with a little bit of sleuth and investigation, going on here, the Turtles, they emerge from the sewers, and April decides that they just look too outlandish because they're giant mutant turtles. So she gets them some hats and trench coats. Of course, this is where we get the famous Turtles in Disguise look that we all know and love from this cartoon. So they
not wearing the silly human face mask at this point; they're just wearing the trench coat.
Yes, yeah, they managed to track down the Foot gang members through a lead they get from this like ninja pizzeria place. We also get a funny moment when they emerge from the sewers first, that there's like an old granny kind of pushing a cart, and
Yeah, with a
she
machine
sees
gun.
the man. Yeah, she's startled, but instead of like running away, yeah, she pulls out a machine gun and threatens them, which of course, it's a nice little, humorous nod to the whole crime wave storyline going on, that even though the old ladies are packing guns just to be able to walk the
I love
streets
that.
safely.
The close up of Raph when he puts a hat on, and I forget the exact line, but it's like a reference to old like 30s, 40s, like Bogart, like film noir type
Yes,
stuff. It's like it's
he
kind of
like
fun, and I love when we first see Shredder in the chair in the Technodrome. You see him from the back, and then you see just his arm, and it's like Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget. You just see this arm, and then it rotates around. And you see the rest of him.
Yeah, Raph, he does he is looking at you, kid. Is that the
That's the
line
one.
he does?
Yeah, yeah. That was
So
on the trading card too. It would have the actual like quote.
they track the Foot Gang down to this like high rise building, and all this action kind of kicks off where the turtles are fighting foot soldiers who are also being introduced to here for the first time. They're the robotic foot ninjas that are like Shredder's main army, and the turtles make quick work of them. Like they just smash the absolute hell out of them.
Yeah,
And
yes, it's quite violent too because they're robots. They can make more contact, but even that aside, later episodes there's less physical violence and use of the weapons. But here they really like slicing arms off and heads off and stuff, and really like smashing the heck out of them.
oh yeah, they're like chopping them in half, and yeah, really, really doing a number on them, like obliterate them
And you do see
essentially.
them when they fight the punks that go after April in the alley scene. You actually see them fight and kick and hit the punks there. Whereas post the pilot episodes, we virtually never see them hit anything directly again. They'll be like, there's a lever or a pulley, and they'll hit the rope, and then the thing on the rope will hit the other character, like a Looney Tunes cartoon, because they try to get away from the ninja element, in large part because of the UK stuff.
Yeah, it's the level of violence is just noticeably a notch or two higher in these early
Yeah.
episodes. You are right about that. Even
And it's
that
perfectly
that much
appropriate. It's
for
more violent than He-Man or anything or Transformers,
of
but they
course, yeah.
really backpedaled on it when they got to the full seasons.
But even what you mentioned earlier about that initial scene at the start when they stop the punks from attacking April, I think we even see after that fight that when the punks are lying on the ground, like Michelangelo actually even just picks one of them in the ribs when they're lying on the ground. So there's a little bit of extra kind of oomph to the fighting going on in
Yeah.
these early episodes. But
They
so
definitely
while this
emphasize the
fight,
ninja elements in this beginning ones, whereas later on they get more they more comic, more comedy in it, and less of the ninja-ing.
yes, ninja-ing, I like that term. I'm going to
Yeah.
steal it. But we see here while this rooftop fight is going on in the high-rise building between the turtles and the foot soldiers, Shredder, as always, is monitoring the situation on his wall of TV screens. So he recognizes that the turtles' fighting style is also the same fighting style as the foot. So he pretty much is able to summarize that these are the students of Hamato Yoshi, and this causes him to kind of panic. He orders the remaining foot soldiers to retreat, and they start retreating down through the building, and they go down into the basement, and April and the turtles go to pursue them, but they activate, there's a big lever that says flooding, and one of the foot soldiers pulls the lever, and all of
Yeah,
a
the whole
sudden the building
whole building's like a facade or trap. It looks like a regular skyscraper building, but really it's like a special building that's going down to the underground of the Technodrome and that.
yes, yeah, so the lever is pulled and the building begins to flood, which causes the turtles in April to have to swim their way up to the top and, grapple hook their way off the top of the building just before it fills with water and explodes. And, in the aftermath, they go back down to the hole where the foot soldiers disappeared through, but they can't find any trace of them. But they do see that there is a big tunnel with tracks leading away. So that's our first. We don't see the Technodrome in the first episode, but
No,
it's our
not yet.
first kind of hint
Yeah.
that something's
And I
coming.
don't know if it's just a generic plot element where it's like this building's a dummy building, but that's another thing that was in the Mirage comics, except there you had the TCRI and the Utrons. They were in a dummy hollow building they'd built themselves because they were aliens and they built it to suit them. So when they go in, it's all full of weird stuff and doesn't really make sense to humans. Like when they go into this building, everything's traps and nothing makes a lot of sense. It's just almost like a film set of a building. It's all kind of fake stuff. I mean, it's a real building, but it's the only purpose is for the subterfuge of Shredder and the foot soldiers to be able to come out and walk out of there, and so that without suspicion. So we get to episode 2, which is Into the Shredder. Some sleepy turtles.
Yes, it starts off with all the turtles napping in their bunk beds.
I like seeing them without the bandanas on.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch. They sleep with their belts and other kind of wraps on, but the headbands have to come off when you're going to sleep. That's the rules.
That's the rule. When you're sleepy, you take your bandana off, and when you wake up, you got to put them back on again.
If you can fit it over your head.
No, this one won't fit. It's made for an 8-year-old. Although one time on Weird Bill, I did squish it on my head for about 10 minutes to be like Lone Ranger style, and it hurt my head so much. The blood was like
constricted the flow of blood to your brain.
Yeah.
So yes, we're here now in our second episode of this little mini series, and the turtles, they wake up from their sleep and they begin their training. And April, she's had a long few days of adventure, so she's like, well, I want to kind of get back to work and go back to my apartment and just, gargle out, as she says, and relax for a while. And so while all this is happening, we got our first proper look at the Technodrome. So we've got the big kind of spherical tank that can travel underground, and it's making its way through the city, digging its massive tunnels. We also get to see for the first time in the series Krang. We did hear his voice briefly, I believe, in the first episode, but now we're seeing him in his full form. So he's basically a brain with a couple of tentacle arms and a great
I always
voice
love his voice. And the voice actor said, I mean, this is interviews decades later. The voice actor for Krang said he based it on like an old Jewish mother. It's like,
yeah, I can definitely hear that, definitely. But he's so him and Shredder, they're kind of partners in crime together. Krang, we learn, is kind of facilitating Shredder by giving him futuristic technology, and Shredder's going out and orchestrating these heinous crimes that are destroying the city. But Shredder, he's basically complaining to Krang that Splinter or that Hamato Yoshi, he's still alive. He's training these turtles, and they're going to probably be powerful enough to take him down if something's not done about it. So Krang theorizes that if the mutagen was able to kind of give these turtles and Splinter the power of a turtle and a rat, basically, that if you were to get two more powerful and ferocious animals and mutate them with some humans, you'd have some pretty formidable warriors. So Shredder, he sends these robots out from the Technodrome to kidnap a couple of animals from the zoo. They kidnap a big warthog and a big rhino. Should probably just point out, by the way, that both of these animals, as they're presented in this cartoon, the warthog itself is already the size of like a small elephant, and the rhino is like sharp teeth. It's the most vicious looking rhino you've ever seen in your life. It looks more like a dinosaur or something. But anyway, the two Technodrome robots, they abduct these animals and they bring them underground to the Technodrome lair, where Shredder is going to attempt to mutate them with a couple of his gang members. So might as well, yeah, try something out. So he goes into the room with the gang members who we saw in the first episode, and he's looking for two volunteers. And none of them are really interested until he kind of reminds them that they'll become powerful enough to take on the turtles that beat them up in the first episode. So this is
these guys are fairly stupid. So not,
they are
even
fairly
before they're
stupid.
mutated, they're not the smartest guys around town.
So Bebop and Rocksteady are the two unlucky ones that volunteer themselves for the procedure. So we may as well take a good look at them now, because this is the last time we'll be seeing Rocksteady and Bebop as humans in the series.
Yep. Until you get to the Nickelodeon era, because we got a different versions of them in that where they actually had Bebop is skinny even after he's mutated, and he was voiced by JB Smooth. That's in like Curb Your Enthusiasm. That was quite fun, but he keeps them skinny like the punk here. And before we go on to the next scene there, I'll just briefly touch on Krang. In this pilot episodes, it's mentioned that Krang's been exiled and there was some kind of warlord, and as punishment for being so horrible, they've removed him from his body. But there's no reference in any of the first couple of seasons to what that body was. And later, of course, he gets his android body. So we don't know if he started with an android body and lost that, or if he had a biological body. We just know that he looks like a brain with arms, and that, go back to Mirage, he's based on the Utroms, which are an alien race. But there were various concepts back then they didn't use. Like, so in the toy line here, Krang's body, gladiator body, 2, in fact, where the brain head would plug on to the top. And these are sketches here by Mirage artists. I can see down the bottom there, it's got Murphy on that one. And they're both by, Murphy. So this was never made for anything, but this is just one of the various concept ones. Other than the android body, is actually like this weird gladiator one, and the weird like kind of fleshy thing that looks almost like a zombie. So that was quite cool. And then we don't get much reference again to Krang's body until season 7. A random episode written by David Wise, who also worked on Transformers and wrote most of these pilot episodes. We finally get a mention again of Krang's body when he clones himself, not just once, but multiple times. He's got all these clones running around the Bobble Walkers, and the clones start growing. And if you want to see, as far as we know, what Krang's original body might look like, basically it's this weird dinosaur reptile thing. The head starts growing, and it grows into the rest of this reptile thing. But some of the stuff in the show, both at the very beginning and even then, even contradicts itself. There's no real internal consistency to it. It's just a kind of throwaway thing as far as writing or plot. But both the pilot and this episode are written by the same guy anyway. So I was just looking that topic up again this week because it's a kind of a head scratcher.
I wonder, I could be getting confused with this episode, or maybe just misremembering, or not recalling correctly. Is there also another kind of continuity weird episode where we meet other brain aliens that are just like Krang, that also don't have bodies, and they never bother explaining that they have also lost their bodies? They're clones.
Yes,
the ones
I think there is. Like, these ones are clones. There's like 1, 2, 3. There's 6 clones, but they're clones of Krang. And I think there is another one where basically it's like they're aliens or other weirdos, where it's pretty much saying that they're Utroms without saying that they're Utroms.
Yes.
But that's in an earlier season. But you got the pilot one you mentioned, and then all of it contradicts each other, but most of it was written by the same guy, but years apart, when you're probably not really, it was a show for kids to promote the toy line. They weren't thinking about a tight continuity or wiki or lore or people looking at this shit decades later. It wasn't on their mind. But it was a bit of fun, bit of trivia anyway, as far as seeing some of the stuff. So we'll go on to the next scene here. We get Ray's Jumbo Pizza. We get some turtles in disguise, but now they're in a different disguise. And they do head down into the big hole in the ground where they find the Technodromers, which also they did very nicely in those Konami video games. The stages pretty much follow these pilot episodes.
Yeah, anytime I see those little rolling butt robots, I always
the Rodney robots. Video games. They're only in the pilot, and you never see them again in the show. Like the first 5 episodes, and after that, gone. Don't know why.
Yeah, they probably
didn't make a toy of it either.
No, they didn't make a toy. So even though
they made the NECA ones, but they didn't make the vintage. They made a vintage Mouser that wound up, So I'm surprised they didn't make these little Rodney robots.
We also see now that Bebop and Rocksteady in their new mutated animal forms are going to be tested in combat against the Turtles.
On this images here.
We also get the rare kind of sight after the initial kind of skirmish where Bebop and Rocksteady kind of fail to fight them in the Technodrome, but in the next scene where they fight them up in the street, we see that Rocksteady has the helmet with the goggles on him.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he's got those goggles on my little statue over here, actually.
And I always loved watching this episode for that reason alone, because of the Rocksteady figure always had the goggles, and I never understood why he didn't have the goggles in the other episodes. I thought it was just part of his gear.
Yeah, it looks cool. And in some of the early promo art in the actual official art by Mirage, he has green pants, which they on some of the promotional stuff, and Bebop has different colors too. So I like seeing those fun different colored ones.
Fun fact, folks, Rocksteady is my favorite of the cartoon characters in this show. I've always just loved him. I love his voice.
He always has the funniest lines.
Yeah. Hoyles. He's just just a great funny. I love Bebop and Rocksteady as a duo anyway, but I always just loved Rocksteady. I thought he just looked really cool. I love the idea of a mutated rhino with a big gun. Can't go too wrong there. So one thing that the Turtles realize pretty quickly is that even though Bebop and Rocksteady are very powerful, they're still a couple of dumbasses, and they're easily tricked into following the Turtles into one of the zoo cages, where the Turtles just lock them inside the cage pretty easily. So they're Bebop and Rocksteady, they're defeated pretty handily for their first ever outing against the Turtles. We're lucky enough for them. Shredder, as usual, has been monitoring the entire situation, so he's able to send the Robbie robots to go pick them up. And the episode kind of ends with Bebop and Rocksteady being kind of dragged underground, and them kind of speculating that they're about to be punished by Shredder for their failure to beat the Turtles.
Now it makes more sense. I played the old Konami game so many times, so I know the stages and that. But in Shredder's Revenge, there's a zoo stage in that as well. So I think that's calling back to this again. It's a popular spot, I guess. It's New York, the city. So, but yeah, I like here you see Raph gets the size and jams them in the robot side. That's really cool. And they fight a whole bunch of weird robots here in the Technodrome that we pretty much never see again, like just miscellaneous, 50s, 60s style weird robots that someone just made up for this scene.
Yeah, lots of wacky robots cool with multiple arms and stuff.
Yeah, and I noticed something else rewatching the miniseries too. Like, how we get in the Twilight, we get the mutant module that comes up and drills through the ground, and we see it in the show a lot. We don't see that until later episodes. In the very, very first appearances of anything like that, the Technodrome actually has these big, long, tentacles that come out like an octopus, and they go all the way up to the surface, and that drill piece is attached to the tentacle. And then when it comes up, like that boss battle when you fight Rocksteady in the video game, that door is actually the tentacle coming up out of the ground. I always thought it was the mutant module, but they're two separate things. But clearly the design and the mutant module came from that the Technodrome tentacle arm, because it's it just snakes around and goes all through the ground. And obviously it would have been less to animate later on, showing one vehicle rather than this big massive thing snaking through the ground.
Yes, and also I suppose for plot reasons as well.
White. It's white. Well, there it is there actually on the left. Yeah. Yes. See, it's white, whereas the mutant module thing has different colors and bits and stuff all over it. But I never noticed that. And in my memory, I was like, oh, it must be that. And it's like, no, just in the miniseries. And then later it's the module thing, because you see it come up and then it would tip over and have the wheels on it and it would climb out.
Yeah, the mutant module for just serves a plot purpose though, where if you need Shredder and his goons to show up where the Technodrome
and it's much cooler than just a stupid white tentacle.
So episode 3, thing about Rat.
So I guess you wanted to 3D print something for a Technodrome. You could 3D print like a tentacle arm thing with the canopy thing at the end of it if you wanted to.
Be pretty cool. It would also be a pretty cool feature if they ever were doing any type of modern, redesign of the Technodrome as a toy feature. If you had some type of weird hose that could come out of this, like kids love playing with that type of stuff. Like, but well, speaking of Mausers, we're going to get some more introductions here in the beginning of the third episode. So it kind of begins with the turtles recovering from the last couple of adventures, and we also see that the recent skirmish in the Technodrome has left Shredder with a lot of his precious technology destroyed. So he needs to find a new scientist and a new source of technology that he can combat the turtles with. So he sends out these little helicopter video bug things to fly all around the city.
Too.
Under kind of spying and
really annoying to hit.
Yeah. But he comes across the character of Baxter Stockman, who we're being introduced to in the first time.
Might need to box the Band-Aids.
Here. Oh, there's a wee Mauser. I want to get a Mauser or two.
They've got me after the cheese or turtles or something.
But yes, we see Baxter. He's trying to pitch his idea to a local businessman who's in the the pest control business. He's like, look, I've invented this little robot called a Mauser. You can track down rats and capture them, possibly kill them, going by these early episodes, because we actually see in the demonstration that it just eats the rat more or less.
Comics, like this is one of the stories that's straight out of the Mirage comics, and they didn't really change the design of the Mausers at all. So the original Baxter, other than being different as motivations, it's mostly the same story. He designs the Mausers as a way of getting rid of the rat problem or rat rodents, whatever, in New York, which is a real problem with it. So as fan of sanitation, there's too many of them. So it is actually lethal. They're meant to kill the mice and get rid of them, as well as like the mouth is a hollow space to actually store and bring them back, like like a garbage truck picking something up, basically, or a forklift or whatever. So, but then in the original comic version, he tests them successfully, but then he decides to hold the entire city hostage of New York and starts tunneling up buildings and stealing money and gold and other stuff. So they're all just part of his evil plan. Whereas this Baxter's not quite so evil. He's more of a doddering scientist.
Yeah, he's in these early episodes, at least, he's nothing but a nerd to be taken advantage of by Shredder, because Shredder, he's spying on this business pitch where Stockman's trying to pitch his Mauser idea. But of course, the local businessman is like, why would I want to invest in an idea that's going to put me out of business? Because if these robots are successful, there'll be no more rats to exterminate, so I won't have a job anymore. So he kicks Baxter out of the shop, and Shredder approaches Baxter. He's like, oh, I think you've got a great idea, and I've got the backing to fund you to make and produce hundreds of these Mauser robots. So Baxter, he's just happy that somebody actually recognizes the genius of his work. So he goes along with Shredder to the latest dilapidated building that they're using as a hideout, and Bebop and Rocksteady bring him loads of circuit boards and kind of raw materials that he'll need to set up a master control system for his army of Mausers he's going to construct for Shredder and the Foot. So that's how we're introduced to Baxter Stockman here. And he is a bit different looking as well to how he appears in the comics.
He's what?
He's a bit different looking to how he's drawn in the comics.
Well, yeah, and the original comic, he was African American, and he had kind of short curly hair, and he did wear little glasses too, but he was just a nerd scientist guy. But in the comic, he is distinctly evil, as in he's like a bad person. Whereas this guy starts off just kind of like a bit of a doddery scientist that gets later on mutated by Shredder into the famous Fly version. But I actually saw for the first time this week, because I've looked up a lot of old, early reference materials, not just for the show, but for Turtles in general, for stuff I've been looking up for myself. in the very early designs by Eastman and Laird, they actually drew 2 sketches of Baxter. One was black, one was white. But this is not for the comic. This was just like a doodle on a bit of paper. So they actually were deciding back then, nothing to do with this show, before the show existed. He potentially could have been white in the comic. It was just a random. It's not actually particularly significant in any way. There was no like particular meaning behind it. It's just like we're designing a bunch of characters, and this is, he might be this guy, he might be this. But I'd never seen that particular illustration before, so that was interesting. So I do wonder when they were doing the show if they also saw that reference image or what was going on there, because we do get the Mirage style Baxter in the Fox kid show in the kind of 2000s era. We get the more comic version, who's very evil from the start, and Shredder always is terrible to him when he starts losing bits of his body and becoming more of a cyborg as the show goes on.
Yeah, and of course, it probably doesn't need to be said in case the folks listening haven't picked it up, but the reason that Shredder is getting Baxter to construct all these hundreds of Mauser robots is so they can hunt down Splinter in the sewers and
he's a rat, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a rat, he's a rodent, so they're perfectly programmed to capture him and bring him to Shredder. So we see Splinter, he's down in the sewers, he's doing some meditation when the Mausers invade, and he fights them off, and
it's really good action scene.
The other turtles, really good action scene, yeah. And we get to see some of Splinter's fighting skills here, which is also nice. So he's able to take care of business. He's also wearing the white headband.
Yeah, that was cool. And this was done by like Toei Animation from Japan, so the action sequences were really cool in the pilot.
So the turtles, they're kind of a bit worried that they can't leave Splinter in the sewers, so they very rudely show up to April's apartment and more or less move themselves in. She's just having a nice relaxing evening, but the turtles show up with Splinter. They're like, look, can we crash in your place? So she begrudgingly lets them stay, and Splinter goes to sleep in the spare room while the turtles make themselves at home. And there's a funny moment where Michelangelo, he's like heating up frozen pizza and like blowing up the oven, and
yeah,
I think Raph he finds some bubble bath and he's reading the instructions, and it's like, oh, add a capful to the water, but he actually sees like a baseball cap and like fills it and throws it in, and
they're just like trashing the place. And even Donatello, the smart one, becomes an idiot for a minute.
Oh, they totally wreck her apartment completely. Now, I will say there's a nice moment for us fans of April O'Neil where she gets completely soaked in bubbly water, and she's, in her robes with her hair dripping wet and water glistening off her. It's a nice little bit of animation that I've always admired in this show. I just thought I'd mention
and
it. But
the scene's funny too, because they're doing like the fish out of water thing, where they're used to being in the sewer, not interacting with regular buildings and people, and they just like don't know what they're doing. So the comedy works well.
So the turtles head off to try and investigate what's going on with these Mauser robots, and they manage to track down Baxter and interrogate him. Of course, they quickly come to the conclusion after Baxter admits that he's actually produced like hundreds of these things that they're probably going to end up sniffing out Splinter in April's apartment. And sure enough, in the next scene, we see Splinter and April. They're just chilling out in the apartment when the Mausers burst through the wall, a la the comics, and just start raising hell and trying to capture Splinter. The turtles, of course, show up just in time to raise some hell themselves and try and stop the Mauser robots. And
we get Krang on that little tripod thing where he sometimes sits on instead of his walker.
Yes, which NECA actually included in the Krang.
Yeah, it's in some of the
game with the Bubble Walker. Michelangelo, of course, is seeing Krang for the first time as well here. He's the first one of our heroes to actually see Krang face to face. Up until now, it's only
freak out if you saw that Krang. What the hell is that?
Oh yeah,
it's a special effect. What's going on?
But yeah, all hell breaks loose. But eventually, the turtles earlier on, we also saw that when they were interrogating Baxter, they managed to confiscate his little radio remote control that he uses to control the Mausers. So Donatello was able, I think, to use that to basically send them away and get them to stop.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be
attacking.
like radio waves controlling them.
So they foiled
they have
Shredder's
basic
plan.
programming, but they've still got to follow the master control.
We've also seen now in a few. This is the third episode. We've seen up until now a few times the Channel 6 news van, which will be coming into play later on in a different form, possibly in the next episode or two. We're going to see it be changed. You could even say mutated into a new type of vehicle later on.
Feels very Night of the Living Dead here with this random house on the hill and Shredder at the window.
Yes, and the van being surrounded by the Mausers as well. They're climbing the sides, ready to feed.
See the Technodrome again with the weird tentacle thing. And now go on to the next bits here. We get episode 4, Hot Rodding Teenagers from Dimension X. So this carries straight on from the other one. We can see they're in the van already at the start, April's van.
Yes, and just as I mentioned, we're now going to see the transformation of the Channel 6 news van into the Turtle van. So this episode is the debut episode of the Turtle van, our childhood favorite vehicle.
Yeah.
And basically
the neutrinos and Trag and Granitor are all seen for the first time.
That's right. Lots of new stuff being introduced here in this episode.
We see April was a decent driver too. So
yeah. Oh, 100%. We got to see Donatello putting his inventing and machine skills to good use as he pretty much
I love him pushing the van and stairs.
Yeah. Yeah, don't even think about the physics of it.
No.
We see as well Shredder's little mutation kind of gun experiment thing. You can probably see here in one of these stills the other
the
gang
mutated
members.
punks.
So, like, is one of them like a lizard or a salamander or something?
Yeah, he looks like some kind of reptile. He's still got the mohawk, so he must be a guy that had the yellow. Not the Bebop and Rocksteady, but the other guy was next to him. Other guys also had mohawks. So he's got the yellow mohawk, and the other guy's got the purple one, and he's a bat. So he looks like some kind of like reptile salamander thing. But that's only a little cutaway frame, and you don't see them again. So that's two other guys that could have made into mutants in the toy line we never saw again.
We do see as well that on the Technodrome for the first time, we're seeing them use the portal gateway to Dimension X, and when they open it first, the neutrinos actually, I think, fly through in their hover car and cause a bit of a ruckus. So then when the gateway opens again, Bebop and Rocksteady are standing by, ready to shoot whatever comes out. But what comes out the other side this time is Krag and Granador, the Rock Soldier commanders, and former associates and followers of Krang. So
they're like
seeing
Krang's private army.
Granador. Yeah, the Rock Soldier. I always love the Rock Soldiers. I have to say.
Yeah, I always love the Rock Soldier designs. It's another one. Weirdly, like we got General Trag as a toy, and he's fairly different to the animation model. I mean, the toy's got a lot more details and cool stuff, but Granitor we never got as a toy in the original line. I always found that really strange because they featured him. You see him a bit here and there, but he is a character that pops up again later in the show. So I always found it really weird as a kid. It's like, oh man, are they going to make him? And they never did. I mean, long time later we got the NECA ones, of course, but that was like decades later.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to pick up the NECA set with those two figures, two big hefty figures. You could definitely use them.
I've got them up in the back corner. I've got I've got Krang at the back, and I've actually got them on either side of him, and then I've got in front of them I've got Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady, and then I've got to the side of them Triceratons.
They feel as heavy as actual rocks when you pick them up.
Yeah, they're very heavy. They're cool figures. The balance is terrible, but they're very nice figures.
So yeah, the neutrinos, they're just teenagers, really, aren't they? They're teenagers from
Yeah, they're
Dimension
just
X.
young. They're just young yahoos, and I mean, the whole design and motif obviously is a throwback to like kind of 50s stuff. You got this big wing flying Cadillac, and they're all their slang like cool and daddy-o and relax and stuff like that. They're all saying, as opposed to like the Mikey surface slang. I love seeing this little
Yeah,
tank thing they come out on, and Trag and Granitor just seem like real definite threats. And we see more here too. Also, this nice details and animation of the interiors of the turtle van that they didn't really bother. They cheaped out on the toy and put a lot of it in there. But we see this here and not really later on. And again, here where April's driving, like the inside of the van must be like gigantic. Like there's so much space in there, but it looks
yeah, it's got
beautiful.
real
And there's cool
like
scenes of the
artist
turtles trying to,
qualities.
yeah, they're trying to fight the neutrinos, but they don't really know who they are or why, and they're just kind of like trying to fight them because they think they're a threat and they're not. And then the next scene, they get to know them and they're playing like pinball in the pizzeria and stuff, and they find out they're fairly similar sort of characters, and they're all kind of like fun-loving, youthful characters.
The Trag and Granador, it turns out, have also brought some technology, I think, along with them from Dimension X, because they've got like a weather machine that can cause like blizzards and stuff in the middle of the city. So
Mr. Freeze, I guess.
They're using that against the local cops and army who are just totally being obliterated by them as well.
Really cool action sequences.
Yeah, it's actually like you said, Trag and Granador, they are presented as a real threat, and it's great kind of seeing them getting to flex the muscles a bit on the streets, and
they're just the leaders. Like
fights.
there's, if Krang invaded Earth properly, he'd have a whole army of rock soldiers. So imagine no army on Earth could stand up to that. Maybe you could drop some bombs on them, but no army could, as far as hand-to-hand combat or any of our stuff. And I imagine that their that tank's probably made of better metals than that we have on Earth.
Yeah, well, they definitely they smash through, like what the cops and the army put in front of them, like so. And that's only two guys, so you can imagine what the actual rock soldier army would be capable of.
Yeah, they would take the city in a day easily.
And of course, this is just it was a nice wee episode to get us to get a few new characters on the playing field, because we will obviously we'll see the neutrinos again sporadically throughout the series, but the rock soldiers themselves become fairly regular.
They're often in the background in certain episodes, and
we'll sometimes get to see in future seasons that you'll see rock soldiers and foot soldiers kind of side by side, and things like that. So no, it's pretty cool. It all kicked off with this episode 4 to get these characters introduced. And yeah, like you're saying, like with the neutrinos, it's total American graffiti style, hot rod and slang, and old rock and roll, daddy-o.
I like in the in bits here we see the turtles in these bunk beds, even though in the other episode they kind of had their own individual beds. Now all of a sudden they're in this big stacked up in a bunk bed.
Yeah, the sewer layer kind of changes dramatically from episode to episode, depending on
who's
what you need
writing
it
and drawing
to be.
what on that day, I guess. Doesn't matter. Makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't care. We were just loving every moment of it.
And I like that even though like it's a show for kids and it has a goofy sort of comical tone, there's like some good action, and you can see that Krang is a real threat to Earth. Like if he invades Earth, or we don't know all their machinations and stuff yet, but we can see Krang teaming up with Shredder and the Rock Shoulders. They're definitely a threat, even though they argue and bicker like an old married couple and have like some of the funny lines in the show as well. So we get to episode 5, which is the end of the mini series or pilot. I mean, this was collectively commissioned, these 5 together as their own little unit of episodes that were then sold and packaged around the world along with the toy line. And it would be a full year later before there was actually a ongoing season of the show, because it wasn't even going to go ahead. It was popular and successful, but they were just going to do it and leave it. But Murakami Wolf, the studio that made the American side of the animation, put some of their own money into it and actually stood behind it. When no, we want to keep making this as a show, not just for the toy, but to actually keep making the show.
And we got another couple. Oh, by the way, apologies if you can hear noise. They're like cutting crops out in the field beside my house, so hopefully it's not interfering too much with the sound. But
Yeah,
we also do get in this episode, we get the turtle blimp. We're going to see that later on for the first time. There's we're going to get to see Krang's android body later on in this episode, which is pretty cool. But this all makes a lot more sense now that you've kind of said it a couple of times about how this was kind of designed just to really get the ball rolling, and they were really focusing on.
I'm only making a lot of sense of this year after watching these multiple times and researching, look up things, going, okay, now I'm read some notes from some of the people who wrote or worked on it. It makes more. As a kid, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just having fun enjoying it.
If you think about it, like over the space of only 5 episodes, they pretty much on screen introduce you to all the main kind of things you'd need for like a fleshed out toy line. Like you've got your main heroes, you've got like a fairly large group of villains already. We're also now going to see a couple of good guy vehicles and a couple of bad guy vehicles. Like they're really going full hog on giving you like a full assortment of characters and vehicles to work
and we
with.
know it's like a mini season arc, because a returning theme in each season would be Krang and Shredder trying to invade Earth or do whatever. And in each season, not unlike the Transformers base, the Technodrome ends up stuck in Dimension X. Then it's in Antarctica. It's under the bottom of the ocean, or it's stuck on a mountain. Like in the final of each season, something always happens to get them. They defeat them, but they get stuck somewhere.
Yes. So we got to see here in the kind of opening moments of this episode that Shredder has in his possession a retro mutagen gun. We kind of saw like a brief glimpse of it in the last episode. Very convenient gun, because you can just point it at the victim.
There's the bad guy. He's being demutated.
Yes, and the gun, it can both mutate you and also unmutate you as well. So a very
and the whole thing is he wants to get Splinter and the Turtles, but mainly, Hamato Yoshi's his enemy and Splinter, and that's the guy he wants to lure out and get with his gun.
Yeah, so Shredder, he sends out this television broadcast where he's essentially just letting the Turtles know, look, I got this gun. It can make Splinter normal again, which is sure thing. You want that to happen, so why don't you come to me and I'll make sure that this happens or whatever. Of course, it's a big trap, and it leads to a big showdown.
If you're dealing with the comic Splinter, that's kind of a threat. You're like, oh, don't turn him back to a rat, and he's helpless. But this Splinter would turn back into a man. So at the time, you think, oh, he might want that because he wants to turn back to a man. But it's only after these episodes does he go, no, I actually want to stay as Splinter.
For a while anyway, because I'm pretty sure once again later on they do an episode where Splinter does become Hamato Yoshi again, and
they always do
being a human
stuff like that.
Yeah, they don't care.
Like Spider-Man no more, or Hulk no more, and then next week he's back again.
So yeah, we get our big street skirmish between the Turtles and the Foot Forces.
And like Bebop's picking up an entire car there, it's like above his head.
Yeah,
it's like Jesus.
Yeah, the power of Bebop and Rocksteady is really amplified in these early episodes. Even though they are a pair of idiots, they are still a threat in the sense that they can, like,
if they're more organized, they would be more threatening. But they're very strong.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, they end up getting like covered in cement and building materials here.
Yeah, I laughed, man, when I saw that scene. It's like in Back to the Future and that, with the manure and that, and Biff Tannen. There's that kind of comedy.
But yeah, we see that Splinter ends up getting like abducted, so it's off to the Technodrome with him, and there's going to be a big rescue here. But as mentioned earlier, this is going to be our first introduction to Krang's new body. So we still see him here on his little roller chair thing, but he's about to get a proper robotic android body, and it's a classic design that we all know and love. Yeah, giant sumo baby with a talking brain in your belly.
Yeah. I just
Very,
love
very
that he
crazy
definitely has
design.
like the real sumo wrestler kind of like thighs, you know, it's the kind of baby fat.
I wonder whose design this really was, because after looking at the
I
Krang's
actually
body
found out this week,
designs,
and I didn't know before. I actually found, well, I don't. As far as David Wise wrote the episodes, but he didn't do the visual design. Obviously, he's writing, so I don't know if he put a description. But actually, are you familiar with Eon Flux?
yes,
Peter Chung, who created Influx, he was. I didn't even know. I was reading through the credits of the show, like on. I mean, they're in the actual credits, but Wikipedia or wherever you can look up a list of who worked on stuff. Peter Chung was a concept designer, not unlike the way, say, Floridaria worked on Transformers. He might not be in individual episodes, but he did a whole bunch of background stuff and sketches. Yeah, I found an old Reddit post this week that linked to a bunch of things, including Peter Chung's actual Instagram account, where he posted the first concept sketch of Krang's android body, and it looks basically like it does there. It has. They added on a few more details, but he did that, and apparently this is a time when Eastman and Laird still had final approval on things, and Kevin Eastman apparently really couldn't stand that design and didn't like it whatsoever. But the animation was at the critical point where they had to go ahead, and the animation people were happy with it. I mean, as far as like the American side who were like, approving things, and they said, no, we're doing this, we're going with it. And so they went ahead and did it. But yeah, Peter Chung, who worked on Influx and also has worked on a lot of other animation and other stuff over the years.
well, I had a feeling it was going to be someone totally different, because the concept drawings you showed us earlier are so far removed from
Yeah, because they were
what we
toy
get here.
designs, whereas this was an animation model. So that's the main difference. I don't know who. I don't know if David Wise, the writer, I assume in the writing he must have written something about it. But on the Peter Chung illustration, which I tried to upload just now because I couldn't find it, because I have it saved from early in the week and now I can't find the damn thing. I'll probably look it up while I'm sitting here actually, because it came up easy enough. But there was a note on there saying that he designed it as if it was like a kind of like futuristic robot or something not from Earth. So it's not immediately obvious that it's a robot to someone who'd be human, because it's meant to be kind of alien or different.
Yeah. No, it's a cool design. Like, I always loved it. It's
I
just
love it.
crazy.
I always have.
Yeah. We see a nice showdown here between Shredder and Splinter in this episode as well, where Splinter will end up destroying the retro mutagen gun, but we do get some nice back and forth, action between him and Shredder. Krang is also, trying to bring reinforcements through from Dimension X as well through the portal, but Donatello's going to end up foiling his plans by, essentially doing the old reversing the polarity trick, and it's going to actually result in the Technodrome itself being pulled into the portal and going into Dimension X. So as you were mentioning earlier, with those kind of plot arcs, when we at the end of this miniseries, the Technodrome is going to be sent to Dimension X, but it's actually going to be coming back from Dimension X when we get to the next season, even though we didn't know that at the time. For all we knew, it was going to be a one and done mini series, and that was that. But
Yeah, that was the original intention, just to help sell the toy line. I mean, it was commissioned partly through Playmates, who like they'd already basically done some early stuff for the toys, but they're like, we want some media or something to go along with this. So they basically said, we want a proof of concept to help promote it.
yeah, and look, they did a bang up job, really, though, in terms of, like I was saying, like the over the 5 episodes, they give you exactly what you would need to field a pretty decent first wave of characters and vehicles for a toy line. So now, obviously, this was very well planned, and they knew exactly what characters they wanted to showcase and what vehicles they wanted to showcase in the miniseries. But they really pulled it off to a T. And as kind of circumstances would have it, even though I'd only be like a baby when this first aired, by the time it was like re-airing and I was watching TV properly, I did actually get to watch the show in order from the from the first episode onwards. So I was kind of hooked from the get-go, and I knew exactly what toys I wanted.
And were you
my
a
parents
sumo baby or just a regular baby?
I was just a regular baby, you know. I'm becoming a sumo
you
baby
weren't
as
an
I get
android.
older, though. Yeah, I'm starting to get a sumo belly in my old age, though.
Yeah, I'm getting one of those as well. Okay, I found that image and I've saved it. So now I'm gonna chuck it in here so I can pop up on screen in a moment. And the cool thing is, when I was looking up that image, I just saved it, found it on the website somewhere because I couldn't find my file. And I just learned another new little fact about his designs. He also worked on the April design, and it says on the article I just looked at. I found the original image as well. Okay, let's chuck both in there. It says that he gave her iconic swishy hair and yellow jumpsuit. As far as it says, he adapted from the Mirage comics and made up this new version of April as far as the visual look, the concept. Okay,
Well,
here we go.
I was always a fan of that look. Very cool.
So this is Peter Chung design sketch. You can see it's Krang's android body. It doesn't have all the extra kind of metallic strips and bits and lines and other stuff. This is just like the basic form, and other bits were added on later on. And you can see his face is a bit more plain, but it's meant to be like, he almost looks like a kind of Play-Doh man or like a golem or something. And I think I can see that's a very intentional design thing. He's not meant to look like a character. He's meant to look like a blank automaton or a Terminator or whatever. So that's his sketch, and then April one there. And you can see that's obviously got a bit more detail than animation because it's an animation style framed sketch, but it's got a bit more in there that'll be simplified when they actually animate something. And here we go. I found the other one. This is actually thing I linked to earlier this week. This is from his actual Instagram, and this is from posts from several years ago, but the sketch goes back a long time. Krang's robot body, and this is from Peter Chung's comments I'm reading here on Instagram. Kevin Eastman complained about this design. Fred Wolf, who mostly did not want to cause delays that would cost money, stood firmly behind my work. I was surprised this went through. I expected to have to redo it, so it's definitely a timeline thing, while agreeing to add robotic elements, the metallic suspenders and visor, which are in the final version. My own view was that the robot was such an advanced machine, it would not fit our own idea what a robot looks like, which makes absolute sense if you look at any other works from Peter Chung. He's always doing really cool designs and ideas.
Yeah, well, look, I love that design, and it is iconic. And it became iconic, throughout the series. So I'm definitely a big fan of it.
Like, I've never owned the vintage toy. They did the Krang's body, which was about 5 or 6 inches, and they did a giant version as well. I've never had either of those or even seen them, and I've gone having no versions. Still don't have the vintage ones, but now I've got multiple Krangs in this room. I've got the Rearshoe Bubble Walker, I've got the NECA Bubble Walker, I've got a BST Bubble Walker, then I've got a PCS plastic statue, I've got the Super 7 giant android that has like the swinging thing, and then of course I've got this Masters style one as well. So now I've got many bloody Krangs. And that's that Andre body one. The other ones I'm not going to pick up. I'll knock over half that shelf to get any of them from over there.
That Masters Krang looks a lot nicer when you see it in person than it did in the.
I love it, man. I paid a fair bit for this because they don't release this stuff here. The Krang is so tiny inside. He's only the size of your thumb. But I do like that basically they took a Masters figure. It still splits in half, and they added this whole extra midsection, which is the piece you see in the middle that's like yellow and red for his, where he lives in there. So they're really weird line that Turtles Masters. Half the designs are a bit rubbish, but I think they really did a cool version of that. But it just goes back to show how cool the original design is to start with, really, that they could turn into this crazy thing.
Yeah, and this is where we got to see it for the first time properly in all its glory, the Krang android body. Of course, later on we'll get to see it in its King Kong city stomping big mode as well. But for now, he's still a big guy even when he's not a giant. He's still like probably 8 or 9 foot tall.
It's animation is tricky because sometimes things are like further closer or further away from your virtual cameras and you're looking through your TV screen, but they're walking foreground background. And Turtles is better than Transformers for things actually big in height or scale to each other, but sometimes Bebop and Rocksteady are a bit taller, and sometimes they're a bit shorter, and sometimes Shredder's tall. But Krang's usually pretty consistently tall. And like I would estimate, like if you or I standing next to him, I would say be at least 10 feet tall. Or basically take Andre the Giant and add a foot or two onto him, and that would be about the actual height I would think in the real world. Because the Turtles are meant to be fairly short guys. In the Mirage, they're only about 4 feet tall. And then in this cartoon, they're probably 4.5 feet tall. And then later shows they're almost like 6 foot tall, like humans, but they're always meant to be small. So if you see them next to Krang, they should really only come up to his waist if he's 8 feet, if they're about 4 and a bit.
Yeah. They're, yeah. And in the movies as well, they're like about 4 foot tall, I'd say.
Yeah.
In the early movies. But yeah, with animation, it just depends on who's doing the animation that week. Because sometimes
it depends
like
on who's working
Transformers,
on what.
sometimes the sizes are crazy.
Because they've changed in every version of the comics, every version of the animation, they're always a slightly different height to everything. That's never that they're always like kind of reinterpreted their own thing, which is fine. They've got to do what makes sense for their show and not be beholden to something from 10 or 20 years previous. But I like that Krang goes from being this invading warlord, but he's also kind of goofy and complains like an old grandmother and whines and all those stupid sounds he makes. Seeing him this android body, he's much more of a threat, but then also that it's going to grow in giant size as well. It's like he's just him alone without the Technodrome. He's also very threatening. I love this awesome fight of Splinter and Shredder inside the Technodrome. Is very cool. And we can see the waiting rock lords, rockmen army waiting in Dimension X. There could be rock lords are there too. Who knows? They might have conscripted them.
Yeah, our first kind of proper little look at Dimension X, I think, as well as this episode.
Yeah, actually, I read another thing this week that's and it's not really talked about. It doesn't really matter. It's more nerd fucking bullshit. But when I was a kid, I watched and like, Dimension X must be like real far away or something like in space, whatever. But it's not. It's meant to be like a parallel dimension to Earth. So when they go through, they're not really traveling in space. They're just going to a dimension that occupies the same place as Earth. Which I didn't get that as a kid because I hadn't, I wasn't reading like Crisis on Infinite Earth or nothing when I was a little kid. Yeah. So that sort of stuff a bit beyond me.
Yeah, because I never thought about it like that. I know, like,
I hadn't until I was reading the article. I was like, it specifically said that. And I was like, okay.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, we get to see Krang come out in the big body now. It's getting bigger. It's getting to the Kong size.
Yeah, and it grows progressively. He's got some kind of MacGuffin, some kind of matter. I forget the terminology. He says a matter reconfigure something or other. Basically, it's changing the atomic structure of him in real time, so he can just grow in size.
Blimp is introduced here as well, of course, in this scene when they're going to attack Krang, but he's gotten so big he's able to actually capture the glider part of it in his hands as well.
That's cool.
To show how gigantic he is.
That'd be good. Have a little miniature blimp thing to hold in the Krang. That'd be cool. And it makes you think of like God of War 2, you fight that Colossus of Rhodes, they go inside and there's the big cogwheel shoulder joint.
You have to see some of his weird kind of apparatus that he can generate where his hands turn into axes or a radio. If you need a radio, his hand can do that too.
You need a Radio Gaga and a Radio Goo Goo.
Yeah, we pretty good fight between the Krang android body and the turtles on the street. Both the action where he's big kaiju size, well not kaiju, but Kong size, and then also when he's more kind of back to his normal size, fighting the turtles on the street.
Yeah, because they sabotage whatever the little MacGuffin is that makes him change size. They sabotage that, and he shrinks down again. And I love seeing the seam of his shoulder and them like climbing out. That's cool.
We see here. I think this is something you'd pointed out to me earlier before we started recording.
Yeah, that's Paul
the gang members.
Street gang
members.
goons.
And they're
Like
still
the
animals.
Rocksteady and Bebop get to go out and do missions. These guys, for the first episode, you don't see. They're just locked up inside the Technodrome. Don't get to do anything.
And in another one of those weird continuity things, isn't there an episode later on where Bebop and Rocksteady go to revisit the old gang and they're humans again?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty. But he has got the retro gun here, so who knows if they let them go again? I don't know, or if they just forgot about them and left them in there.
Or maybe when the retro gun was damaged, that it reversed something or other. Who knows?
Because the idea is like Shredder's trying to, like, Krang is his own, like Warlord. He has his own army. He doesn't really give a stuff what Shredder's doing. Like, it's only that Shredder's kind of teaching him about Earth and that sort of thing that it's convenient. So Shredder needs Krang more than Krang needs Shredder. So Shredder's kind of trying to, get more troops or guys or whatever for his own forces. So in later episodes, we get other characters like Leatherhead, and we get other mutants. He's always he's failed to beat the Turtles, and he's always looking for other backup. But we don't see these punk guys. He's not, obviously they didn't work out. He doesn't. People in Rocksteady weren't very smart, so he thought, "Oh, we're going to bother with the rest of this gang."
Yeah, cut my losses now. It's a
I
nice
like the little special effects too, of like the dimensional portal and like the cool crackling Highlander effect on the screen.
Yeah, I always liked their portal special effect they used for it opening up. I like as well that once now that Krang's android body is like permanently a part of the show now, it does create more of that feeling of equality between him and Shredder, where they can kind of
Yeah,
bicker back and forth now, and you don't really feel like, oh well, Shredder could just like slice Krang's head open because he's just a
you just
brain.
kick him across the room like a football.
Yeah. Whereas at least now, they can bicker back and forth and be on an equal playing field.
Yeah, and I do like their banter. It's like an old, like, bloody husband and wife sort of arguing back and forth. Funny.
The rock soldiers coming through here. I like these little shots we actually do get of Dimension X, even though you only ever see them for like a second or two.
Yeah,
They
it's not
are
a
very
fun place,
cool.
and I like when you get to see Shredder without his mask on. I mean, we had the flashbacks, origin sequences, but now he's the Shredder getting to see them without his faceplate on. It's cool.
Some Turtles merchandise being worn here by the
Yeah,
people
total
being
power.
interviewed on TV. It's another one of those weird things where it's like the end of that Transformers pilot miniseries where you kind of get the feeling like that everything's been resolved. It's like the city wants to thank the
Yeah,
Turtles and they're our heroes and they're going to be welcome here from now on type of thing. Whereas by the time we get around to season 2, that's kind of forgotten about.
yeah. And the TV changes too in different seasons, but I mean, maybe it craps out and they find another one. But but I noticed the TV, like, position and the model of TV changes and stuff for the show.
And of course, the most impressive feat the Turtles have ever managed to pull off is to be able to watch the TV without it actually being plugged into anything.
Yeah,
They also get excellent reception down in the sewers, despite the fact they're
yeah,
only
very good
using a
reception
little
through all the brick
bunny
walls.
ears.
It's not like here where I live in my brick house and I can't get the Wi-Fi working at the other end of the house.
That was the thing. Watching this as a kid, you weren't like constantly like, "Oh, they're in a dirty, dank sewer." It actually looked
Yeah,
like a
it's
nice enough place.
disgusting still. It's been well painted and neat.
It looked like a nice kind of bespoke apartment these days. You'd
Yeah,
pay to live in
if
squalor
you're
like
in
that.
some other city, you could go, well, most sewers are like so small you couldn't fit a person in them. There'd be like little access hatches, and it's mostly pipes and it's underground. But in some of the old New York ones, they do actually have some really gigantic open spaces and shit that they play up in Turtles and Batman Media a fair bit. They always take artistic license with them, but they do have some really old style, big open, areas in it. So it makes it more believable when you're watching the Turtles.
But yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, though, the plan is thwarted. The polarity of the portal is reversed. The Technodrome is pulled into Dimension X, and of course the mutagen retro mutagen gun or whatever doesn't end up playing a factor, and all is right. All is right in the city until the next season. That is.
Yeah, there's a portal opening around October this year in Australia, and hopefully one of those technodramas is going to get sucked here.
Yeah, hopefully it gets sucked in over here to Ireland as well.
Yeah, has there been any listings yet? I'm sure they'll sell stuff.
Not yet. It will. It will happen. I'm pretty
buy one from Australia because I'm sure there'll be a few
exactly. If I got really
I know someone who could organise to post one from here. If I can get a hold of plenty enough of them. Depends where they come in stock. If they get, hopefully places won't sell through right away, and there'll be enough of them, to actually be in stock. And that
we perhaps should revisit this show as well someday with maybe of some of our favorite episodes from the later seasons. It'd be nice to maybe have a look at. Because I do find the first two seasons I know pretty well, but after that, my memory does get a little bit murky.
Well, it trails off, and a lot of depending on where you lived in the world, would play some of the seasons in order, and then it went into reruns, even when they were making new episodes, because it became more expensive to do first run shows while the popularity of the toys was going down. Still selling, but going down. You've got that first 3-year window, that toy cycle, which Turtles had kind of a 5 or 6 year cycle, depending on what metrics you go by. But the show ran for 8 or 9 years. It kept going even when the toy line wasn't selling terribly well, and the toy line went for a long time as well. But the next thing to come along, Power Rangers came along, that got popular. Beast Wars came along, and that got popular. So a lot of those later episodes, a lot of people who grew up with the show have never seen, because either they didn't show them, or they show them out of order, or they went and ran into reruns, or you got older and stopped watching it. Because when I started the show, I was probably 8 years old. When it finished, I was nearly 17, 18 years old. So I was doing I still like the Turtles, but I was probably watching Transformer reruns and I'm buying comics, buying superhero comics.
Yeah, well, for me, I just started to drift into the other 90s cartoon shows like Spider-Man and X-Men and stuff. The Turtles kind of became, it just started to become a bit passé for the time. Also, as well, though,
and there are some real clunker seasons. Some of those later ones, there's good ones,
some awful
real clunker seasons.
And then when they start trying to be really serious and doing like, long shows, like season story arcs, and like Leonardo has a mutation disease, and how are we going to cure him?
Yeah, that's
and
the
all
final season with the Red Sky and all that.
Yeah, it gets a little bit too.
They start mutating to like the Incredible Hulk style. Actually, I'll wind back here a minute if I go back. Give us a headache. Hang on, I'll do it the other way. Look here, see, like, here's a start. Look at the background. Whoa, Red Sky. It's a reference to that final season, because it gets known as the Red Sky background episodes.
Yeah, and they they phase out Shredder and Krang, and
they put footage of the live action movie into the opening sequence, which was like weird. And the theme song became crap. It just went Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle like that, and it was just the later theme song was terrible. See the original one.
Yeah, they really they became desperate towards the end. But look, in fairness, they had a great run. They had an almost decade-long run as a kid show.
Most shows never ran that long for as far as animated kid shows made to sell toy lines, and most toy lines didn't run that long. Like anything that wasn't Star Wars didn't run that bloody long. And even Star Wars ended and had a gap for a number of years before it came back and got relaunched again. But Turtles did end, but they kind of, not unlike Transformers and G2, all of a sudden, a year or two goes by and whatever, and Power Rangers was the big thing. So then they did Next Mutation, which actually was a Saban production, because they were like, well, we don't know what to do, let's let these guys have a go. So they made a Power Rangers style live action show, which is not the best show, but looking back in retrospect, I think that it actually is not a bad show as far as the quality of what they put into it. I don't look at it and go, this is my favorite Turtles thing ever, because it's definitely not. And Eastman and Laird were not happy about when they the Saban and the network people are like, we want to put this like female turtle into it. Nothing gets anyone like female turtles, but it's like going, well, we've got the Beatles, we've got this okay, what do we need now? Let's put Mick Jagger in the Beatles. Like, no, that's fucking stupid. You're ruining what's the formula, what works. both of them were against it, but they didn't. They could have said no to it, but it would have stopped the entire show from existing. And they were like, either we make the show with this female turtle and you give them money, or you say no, the show goes away. They're like, okay, we'll do the show, even if we don't like it, because it came down to the point they were going to cancel it or whatever.
Yeah, they needed the Yoko Ono, those Beatles up a bit.
Yeah, they needed the Yoko. So I don't hate that show. I'm actually going to watch that show in the next couple of weeks because I've got like digital version of it. I'm going to watch it like fully all the way through and subject myself to the terror of it. I think it's fine for young kids. But if you're 10 or over, it's like, no, even at that age, you're kind of going, this is it's not as good as Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Even though it's made by the same company.
And they even did the Power Rangers crossover, isn't that right? With
they did. Yeah, they did in that show, and years later in the comic, they've done comic crossover as well. But yeah, that's the end of our brief look at the pilot original episodes of the Murakami Wolf Swenson animated Ninja Squirtles. And we will do another follow-up episode another time where we'll pick some like favorite episodes from different seasons. It'll be like all my favorite Bebop and Rocksteady moments.
But yeah, next show we got the live action movie talk coming.
Yeah, and I always associate it very heavily with Jim Henson, but like the thing to remember, it was the Jim Henson workshop. He's like a consultant. It was his son Brian Henson was doing most of the stuff at that time, where he was kind of like semi-retiring almost at this point.
Yeah, I have this the image of them all kind of looking up from the sewer. That's my wallpaper on my laptop.
Very iconic images. I used to have the poster of that, and that one of Henson as Leno, that was in so many. That exact image was in so much worldwide media, magazines, newspapers, and that. I remember just seeing it and going, "Whoa!" And even when I was a kid, I knew who Jim Henson was. It's like, "Whoa, that's Jim Henson, or that's Leonardo." It's cool.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about this one, and it's one of those things I've a somewhat complex relationship with it. Like I loved it as a kid, then got a bit older, didn't like it as much, then loved it again as an adult when I kind of, it's just oh, but no, I love it now though. I love it now again. I sense
another Ref attack coming on.
Yeah.
Them's fighting words.
Well, Raph has a great showing in the live action movie, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it was a really, really good blend of the Mirage source material, which they pulled a lot of out of the very first story arcs, and then they bring in some of the cartoon stuff. But the tone was awesome, and I genuinely like all three of the Turtles live action films, even though a lot of people don't like the second film and the third film. I still like all three. I still rewatch them. But the tone they got perfect on this first one. It's more like in this era we got Dick Tracy, we got Batman, we got the Crow. We had Shadow, had the Phantom. Some of those were good, some not so good, but the tone was more 70s New York, dirty, grimy streets, crime. But it was like PG-13, kind of in the middle there. It's where it's okay for younger kids to watch. It's not too violent, but it's just violent enough where it's appealing for the teenagers and, older kids.
Yeah, well, I thought it was pretty hardcore as a kid, which we will get into it in detail next week. But yeah, it's a great movie. It's got a great soundtrack, and it made a ton of money, which I'm sure we're also going to talk about.
Like I can see its shortcomings. Like I've read in the last couple of years about, like any film production history, what was on the cutting room floor, what made it in, what didn't. You can always see the flaws. Like if you watch Terminator 1 or watch Transformers movie, what bits didn't go in, but in your mind, the full backstory, so it makes sense to you. So you're more forgiving of its flaws in it.
Yeah, no, we're going to be getting into it. It's going to be good. We're going to keep on our green energy kick. We're being very we're being very green and eco-friendly, which is why we're tackling the Turtles.
Oh, I forgot. We'll mention. We'll probably touch on it next week, even though it's an animation thing. I saw for the first week this time. Have you seen Turtle Tips? And I'm not nothing suggestive. This was an actual thing They were like promos, you know, the G.I. Joe ones and the Transformers ones, like, oh, do this and look after World and He-Man, all those PSA type shit. I've never seen them. There was Turtle Tips. They're on YouTube, and there was something like 8 or 12, and they used to play only on the CBS Saturdays for the block, and I think it helped fill out the block of the hour before they went to the commercials and all that. They're like 30 seconds long each. I'll chuck you the link. You might have seen them or not. I've never seen them because they didn't play them in New Zealand, same as they didn't play the Transformer PSA or cutaway bits. They didn't play those in New Zealand either as a kid. They got edited out.
Yeah, we never got the now kind of PSA bits either over here.
I've saved one offline and it's in Russian, so I might play that next week if it'll let me.
Why not? We'll give it a shot.
But yeah, that's the show for this week, guys. Thanks for checking out. Leave a like or a comment. Tell us if you've got a favorite episode or character and whatnot.
Yeah, tell us who your favorite turtle is and who your favorite villain is, or if you hate the turtles, tell us that too, because we're always curious to hear from people like you.
Hulk is best. Hulk smash turtles. Now Hulk would team up with the turtles. I'd love to see like live action Lou Ferrigno Hulk teaming up with the 1990 live action movie Turtles. That would be an awesome team up, like a TV 1 episode special. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that would be Bossa Nova radical.
Bossa Nova. Okay. Otherwise, we'll start doing this talk. We'll still be here next week this time, so we haven't left.
Okay, folks. Take care, everybody.
Catch you later.